The Porsche's horn split the morning quiet like a blade. Sharp, sudden, unforgiving. 7:15 a.m. Downtown parking garage. Fluorescent lights flickered against polished concrete as Veronica Grant emerged, her $600 Louboutins echoing off bare walls. Diamond Patek Philippe catching weak sunlight. Eyes cold as January steel. The battered Toyota Camry in her reserved spot didn't move fast enough. She crossed the distance in 6 strides, knuckles rapping glass hard enough to leave prints. The man inside, flannel shirt creased with yesterday's exhaustion, met her glare without flinching. People who drive junk like this should take the bus. His hand stayed steady on the wheel. No tremor, no apology. Just the quiet dignity of someone who'd already survived worse than her contempt. She leaned closer, breath misting the window. "My company is yours if you can outrun me with that piece of junk." The words hung between them like a challenge and a prayer. Then his daughter's voice, small and certain from the shadows of the back seat. "Daddy, why does winning make her so lonely? What happens when a woman who has everything races a man who has everything to lose?" Raymond Cole reversed the Camry without another word. The engines rumbled deeper than anyone would expect from a 19-year-old sedan. Veronica stood in the empty space, watching the taillights disappear around the corner. Her assistant's voice crackled through her Bluetooth earpiece about the 9 o'clock board meeting, but she wasn't listening. The child's question echoed in her head like a stone dropped in still water. Why does winning make her so lonely? She shook it off, climbed into the Porsche, and drove to the 52nd floor where her empire waited. But the question followed her into the elevator, into the glass-walled conference room, into every handshake and quarterly projection. By noon, she'd snapped at 3 executives and canceled 2 interviews. Her CFO asked if she was feeling all right. She said she was fine and disappeared into the office, staring at the city below like it might hold answers. That evening, Raymond picked up Penny from Lincoln Elementary at 3:30, same as every day. She climbed into the back seat with her purple backpack, chattering about a drawing she'd made in art class. A family of birds, she said, all different colors, but flying together. Raymond smiled in the rearview mirror, but his mind was elsewhere. The woman in the Porsche, the contempt in her eyes. The challenge hanging between them like live wire. He'd spent 10 years building a quiet life after Angela's death, freelancing from home, raising Penny alone, staying invisible. Racing was the ghost he'd buried with his wife. But now, inexplicably, it clawed at him. Not the thrill, the memory. Angela's laugh as they tore through back roads at midnight, the weight of the wrench in his hand, the smell of motor oil and possibility. He pushed it away and made macaroni and cheese for dinner, listening to Penny explain why birds didn't need maps. Veronica couldn't sleep. Midnight found her in her penthouse, $15 million view, sprawling before her like a kingdom she'd conquered and couldn't enjoy. She paced between rooms too large for one person, past art she'd bought because advisors said it would appreciate, through silence that felt like judgment. She pulled out her laptop and typed the license plate into a private database she kept for due diligence. Raymond Cole, 38. Software consultant. Address in a modest neighborhood she'd never visited. No criminal record. No social media presence. Widower. The last detail stopped her fingers on the keyboard. She closed the laptop, poured whiskey she didn't drink, and stood at the window until dawn broke over the skyline. When her assistant called at 6 to confirm morning meetings, Veronica heard herself say she'd be late. She didn't explain why she was driving to a parking garage she owned, but never visited. Raymond arrived at 7:10, 5 minutes earlier than yesterday. The Porsche was already there, blocking the same spot, Veronica leaning against the hood with arms crossed. She'd traded the business suit for designer jeans and a leather jacket, but the coldness remained. He pulled to a stop 3 feet away, engine idling. Penny stirred in the back seat. Veronica walked to his window. Knocked once. He lowered it. "You didn't answer yesterday," she said. Her voice carried the same edge, but something underneath had shifted. Fatigue, maybe. Or doubt. "I told you," Raymond replied. "I don't race anymore." She studied him through the glass barrier. "Why not?" He considered lying. Considered silence. Considered driving away. Instead, he said, "Because the last time I did, my wife didn't come home." The words landed between them like dropped crystal. Veronica's expression didn't change, but her shoulders lowered half an inch. "I'm sorry," she said, and for the first time sounded like she meant it. They stood in awkward stillness, the garage's fluorescent hum filling the space where conversation should be. Finally, Veronica straightened. "I own this building," she said. 12 others like it. Company worth $2.8 billion. Forbes 400. Started from nothing. She paused, jaw tight. "And I can't remember the last time someone said no to me." Raymond watched her through the window. "Is that why you're here? Because I said no?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Maybe. Or maybe because that little girl in your back seat saw something I've spent 10 years hiding." She glanced past him to where Penny sat, awake now, watching with those 2 knowing eyes. "How old is she?" Raymond's hand tightened on the wheel. 8. Veronica nodded slowly. "Same age I was when my mom died. Car accident. Mechanic, like I said. Taught me everything before she was gone." The confession hung there, unexpected. "I'm sorry," Raymond said, and meant it. Veronica shrugged. "Long time ago. But you never really stop racing the ghost, do you?" Saturday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of dawn that makes you question every decision. Raymond had told himself all week he wouldn't go. Told Penny they'd spend the day at the library. But at 5:45, he was in the Camry with his daughter buckled safely in back, driving toward the industrial park on the east side. His hands remembered the wheel's grip. His feet remembered the pedal's weight. His heart remembered the fear. He almost turned around 3 times, but something pulled him forward. Not pride, not anger. Curiosity, maybe, about the woman who'd looked at his beat-up car and seen a scoreboard. About himself, and whether the man he'd become could face the man he'd been. The industrial park was empty, just cracked pavement and abandoned warehouses. The Porsche waited at the far end, engine already running. Veronica stood beside it, arms wrapped against the cold. When she saw the Camry approach, something flickered across her face, relief, maybe, or recognition. Raymond parked and stepped out, leaving the engine running. Penny stayed inside, watching. Veronica walked over, stopped an arm's length away. "You came," she said. "I came," Raymond confirmed, "but not for your company, not for stakes. Just," he trailed off, searching for the right words, "just to show you something." She frowned. "Show me what?" He gestured to the empty road ahead. "1 lap around the park, 2.8 miles. You in your Porsche, me in my junk. No bets, no prizes, just the race." Veronica's eyes narrowed. "What's the point if there's nothing to win?" Raymond smiled, sad and knowing. "That's what I'm trying to show you. Ready?" She held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded. They walked to their cars. Raymond slid behind the Camry's wheel, checked the mirror to see Penny's solemn face. "Daddy," she said quietly, "be careful." He reached back and squeezed her hand. "Always." At the starting line, 2 engines growled. The Porsche's was a refined snarl, Engineered perfection worth $200,000. The Camry's was something else entirely. A deep, threatening rumble that spoke of late nights in garages and modifications that wouldn't appear on any Carfax report. Veronica glanced over, surprise flickering. She mouthed, 3, 2, 1, and they launched forward. The Porsche exploded off the line, 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds, pulling ahead by 4 car lengths in the first 100 yards. Veronica's hands were tight on the wheel, jaw set, pushing the machine to its limits. This was what she knew. Speed, control, winning. The first turn approached fast, a sharp right that demanded respect. She braked late, hit the apex perfectly, felt the tires grip and release and grip again. Behind her, the Camry entered the same turn slower, more cautious. She pulled further ahead on the straightaway beyond. 5 car lengths. 6. The race was already over, but then the road curved into an S section, tight switchbacks that demanded finesse over power. Veronica took them aggressively, muscling the Porsche through with precise inputs. Yet somehow, impossibly, the Camry began closing the gap. Raymond drove differently than her. Not faster, smoother. Each brake point exact. Each turn entry calculated. Each acceleration timed to the fraction. He wasn't fighting the car. He was dancing with it. 5 car lengths became 4. 4 became 3. Veronica's foot pressed harder on the throttle, but the laws of physics didn't care about her will. The Porsche was heavier, wider, more powerful, but less nimble through these corners. The Camry, lighter and lower, and driven by someone who knew every inch of its capabilities, carved through like a knife. 3 car lengths became 2. Veronica's knuckles went white on the wheel. She'd been racing for years, professional instruction, track days, the best equipment money could buy. But the man behind her had learned in the streets, where mistakes meant more than lost races. The second mile was a battle, straightaway to hairpin to straightaway again. Veronica pulled ahead on power. Raymond caught up on corners. They traded positions 3 times, neither giving quarter, both pushing their machines to the edge. Inside the Camry, Penny sat perfectly still. Trust absolute. Inside the Porsche, Veronica felt something unfamiliar building in her chest. Not fear, not even excitement. Recognition. This man wasn't trying to beat her. He was showing her something. About skill that couldn't be bought. About passion that survived tragedy. About the difference between winning and racing. The final mile stretched ahead, a long straight into a vicious hairpin before the finish. Veronica pushed the Porsche to 180 miles per hour, wind howling past the windows. The Camry topped out at 165, falling behind again. 3 car lengths at the hairpin. She braked at the 100-meter marker, standard entry. Raymond waited until 70 meters, late braking with absolute confidence, diving inside. The Porsche had to yield to avoid contact. They exited side by side. The final straightaway was half a mile of cracked asphalt and morning light. Raymond's foot was flat on the throttle, the Camry giving everything it had. Beside him, the Porsche's superior power began to show. Veronica pulled even, then ahead. Half a car length. 1 car length. Victory materializing like it always did. 200 meters to the finish. 100. 50. And then, almost imperceptibly, Raymond's foot lifted a fraction off the throttle. Not surrender. Choice. The Porsche crossed the finish line, half a car length ahead. Veronica saw it in her mirror immediately, the moment he'd let her win. Again. She screamed in frustration, punching the steering wheel hard enough to hurt her hand. Not celebration, rage. At him, at herself, at the scoreboard that meant nothing. She pulled over, yanked the parking brake, and sat in silence while the engine ticked, cooling. Raymond stopped beside her. Neither moved for a full minute. The world was still, except for morning birds and distant traffic. Finally, Veronica climbed out, hands shaking. Raymond emerged too, calm as stone. They stood 3 feet apart, engines silent now. "You let me win," Veronica said, voice raw. "You won the race," Raymond replied evenly. "Stop lying!" The words erupted from somewhere deep and desperate. "I felt it. Last 50 meters you lifted. Why?" Raymond met her eyes, unflinching. "Because you didn't need to lose. You needed to understand that winning doesn't mean what you think it means." Tears ran down Veronica's face now, makeup smearing. "Then what does it mean?" He gestured back to the Camry, where Penny watched through the window. "That, having someone who matters more than the finish line, someone you'd slow down for." Veronica followed his gesture, saw the child's face. "I don't have anyone," she whispered. "I built everything, earned everything, have everything, and I wake up alone every day, wondering why it feels like nothing." Her voice broke. "Why doesn't winning make me happy?" Raymond took a step closer, his voice gentle. "Because you're racing the wrong thing. You're racing to prove you're not the poor kid anymore, not the girl who lost her mom, not the one people underestimated." Veronica stared at him, stunned by the accuracy. "How do you?" He smiled sadly. "Because I did the same thing. After Angela died, I raced to outrun the grief. Faster and faster, like speed could change the past. Until one night, I realized I was racing away from Penny, not toward anything that mattered." He paused. "That's when I stopped. Not because I was scared, because I finally understood. The race doesn't end, not until you choose to stop running." Veronica sank against the Porsche's hood, legs giving out. She slid down until she was sitting on the cold ground. This woman worth billions, this CEO who commanded boardrooms, reduced to her smallest self. Raymond sat beside her, not touching, just present. They watched the sunrise together in silence. After a long time, Penny opened the Camry door and walked over. She stood in front of Veronica, studying her with those ancient eyes. "Miss Veronica," Penny said softly, "do you know why my daddy stopped racing?" Veronica shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Because," Penny continued, "he said the fastest thing isn't a car, it's time, and he didn't want to waste any more of it going in circles." She reached out and took Veronica's hand. "You're going really fast too, but you're still in the same place." The child's wisdom cut deeper than any insult. Veronica looked down at the small hand in hers. Warm, trusting, real. When was the last time someone had touched her without wanting something? When was the last time she'd let them? She squeezed gently, afraid of breaking something precious. "Your daddy's very wise," she managed. Penny shook her head seriously. "No, he's just sad. Like you. But he figured out how to be sad and still okay." She paused. "You could too, I think." With that, she let go and walked back to the car, leaving Veronica and Raymond sitting on cold pavement as morning turned the sky from gray to gold. "I resigned," Veronica said suddenly. Raymond looked at her, surprised. "What?" She laughed, bitter and free. 3 days ago, the board wanted a merger, $2.7 billion, biggest deal of my career. But it meant killing 2,000 jobs." She picked at a crack in the asphalt. Old me would have signed without hesitation. Growth above all, profit above people, win above everything. Her voice dropped. But I kept seeing that parking garage, your daughter's face, that question, and I couldn't. She looked at him. I voted no. They tried to override me, so I resigned. Raymond absorbed this. How do you feel? She considered. Terrified. Free. Broke, relatively speaking. They bought me out for $800 million, but I'll probably donate most of it. She smiled through tears. And I have no idea what to do next. No meetings, no goals, no scoreboard. She paused. For the first time in my life, I don't know what winning looks like. And it's okay. Raymond nodded slowly. Welcome to being human. They sat a while longer, two broken people learning to be still. 2 weeks later, Raymond opened his apartment door to find Veronica standing in the hallway, holding car keys. Not Porsche keys. Honda keys. I bought a Civic, she said without preamble. 2005, 90,000 miles, $8,000. It needs work. She held out the keys. Teach me? Raymond stared, then smiled. Come on. The apartment building had a communal garage in the basement, dim and oil-stained, and perfect. Raymond's Camry sat in the corner, hood already open. He'd been tuning the engine, habit and therapy combined. Veronica followed him down, nervous in a way boardrooms had never made her. I don't know anything, she admitted. Yes, you do, Raymond replied. Your mom taught you. She shook her head. That was 25 years ago. I've forgotten. He handed her a wrench. Then let's remember together. Over the following weeks, they established a rhythm. Veronica would arrive at 9 p.m. after Penny was asleep with the neighbor watching. They'd work until midnight, hands dirty, conversation sparse, but genuine. Oil changes, brake pads, suspension bushings. Simple things made complicated by time and rust and cheap previous repairs. Raymond taught patiently, the way someone who truly understands can teach. Veronica learned hungrily, the way someone starved for meaning can learn. She asked questions, made mistakes, stripped bolt heads and dropped washers and cursed like her mother used to. But slowly, the Civic transformed. New fluids, new filters, new confidence. Sometimes Penny would appear, unable to sleep, and sit on an overturned bucket doing homework or drawing. She'd ask Veronica questions about running companies, and Veronica would answer honestly about loneliness and doubt, and the weight of decisions. The child would nod like she understood, because somehow she did. One night, 3 weeks into their sessions, Veronica looked up from an engine bay and said, I've been thinking about something. Raymond glanced over from where he was bleeding brakes on the Camry. Yeah? She wiped oil from her hands. What if we did this for kids? Underprivileged teenagers. Teach them to work on cars. Not as mechanics necessarily, but as builders. People who can take something broken and make it whole. Raymond stopped working. Like a program? She nodded. I've got the money. You've got the knowledge. We could start small. 1 warehouse, 15 kids, tools and parts and patience. Her voice grew excited. Not about making racers, about making people who understand that value isn't price. Raymond considered this, turning a wrench in his hands. Angela would have loved it. Penny would benefit from seeing purpose beyond survival. And he might finally do something that mattered beyond keeping one child alive and himself sane. Yeah, he said finally. Let's do it. They shook hands like business partners, like friends, like two people who'd found each other by accident and decided it meant something. Over the next 3 months, Veronica found a warehouse in the industrial district where they'd raced. Raymond sourced tools and lesson plans and contacted social services about at-risk youth. Penny designed a logo in art class, a gear with wings. They called it Second Gear Youth Automotive Program. Veronica wrote checks. Raymond interviewed instructors. Together they built something neither could have built alone. The first cohort started in October. 15 teenagers, ages 14 to 18, from neighborhoods where hope was currency in short supply. Veronica taught basics, leaning on half-remembered lessons from her mother and recent relearning from Raymond. Raymond taught advanced concepts, drawing on decades of experience. Penny helped younger kids read manuals, patient and kind. 6 months into the program, Veronica stood in the warehouse watching a 17-year-old named Marcus successfully rebuild a carburetor he'd destroyed twice already. The kid's face when it worked, pure, uncomplicated joy, hit her harder than any quarterly earnings report ever had. Raymond appeared beside her, hands in pockets. "You look happy," he observed. She glanced at him, surprised. "I think I am." It was tentative, this happiness, fragile, but real in a way nothing had felt real in years. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me," she wanted to say. "For racing me. For letting me lose and win and figure out they're the same thing. For showing me that speed isn't the point. Instead," she just said, "for teaching me." He smiled. "You taught yourself. I just held the flashlight." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching teenagers learn that broken things could be fixed, that patience mattered more than power, that building something was better than buying anything. Outside, Veronica's Civic sat next to Raymond's Camry, both modified, both loved. Neither impressive, but both exactly right. The following spring brought an unexpected visitor. A young woman in her 20s walked into the warehouse during a Saturday session, looking nervous. She approached Veronica, who was elbow-deep in an engine, with a 16-year-old named Crystal. "Ms. Grant?" The woman's voice shook slightly. Veronica straightened, wiping her hands. "Yes?" The woman held out a framed photograph. "I'm Tasha. I worked at Grant Tech. We wanted to thank you." Veronica took the frame, looked down. It was a picture of 200 employees holding a banner that read, "Thank you, Veronica. You saved our jobs." Her throat closed. "What happened?" Tasha smiled. "The merger fell apart. New CEO tried to push it through, but employees revolted. Said if Veronica Grant thought it was wrong, they wouldn't support it." She paused. "The board restructured. Worker cooperative now. 2,000 jobs saved. Families intact." Tears blurred Veronica's vision. "I didn't do anything. I just stopped doing the wrong thing." Tasha shook her head. "You showed us that some things matter more than profit. That's everything." She left the photo and departed. Veronica stood holding it, overwhelmed. Raymond walked over, read her expression. "Good news?" She nodded, unable to speak. He put a hand on her shoulder, steady and real. "You did good," he said simply. She leaned into the contact, just for a moment, drawing strength. "We did good," she corrected. Together, they returned to teaching. Summer arrived with Penny's 9th birthday. Raymond planned something small, just them and 3 school friends at the apartment. But when the doorbell rang, Veronica stood there with a wrapped gift and an uncertain smile. "Penny invited me," she explained quickly. "Is that okay?" Raymond stepped aside. "Of course." The party was chaos. Children's laughter and too much cake, and a piñata that refused to break. Veronica sat on the couch, watching the mayhem, looking more relaxed than Raymond had ever seen her. When Penny opened presents, she saved Veronica's for last. Inside was a leather tool belt, sized for a child, with Penny's name embossed on it. The girl threw herself at Veronica, hugging hard. "It's perfect! Now I can help for real!" Veronica hugged back. This woman who'd commanded boardrooms and stared down investors, holding a 9-year-old like she was the most precious thing in the world. Over Penny's head, her eyes met Raymond's. "Thank you," she mouthed. He smiled. "Welcome." Later, after the guests left, and Penny crashed exhausted in her room, Raymond and Veronica cleaned up together. "She's an incredible kid," Veronica said, tying a garbage bag. "She is," Raymond agreed. "Takes after her mom. Angela was—" He stopped, the grief still sharp after all these years. Veronica waited, not pushing. "She was fearless," he continued quietly. "Laughed at danger, lived at full throttle. I loved that about her, but it's also what killed her." He paused. "Sometimes I wonder if I taught Penny to be too careful, to fear speed instead of respecting it." Veronica considered this. "You taught her to be thoughtful. That's different than fearful." She smiled. "Besides, she's not afraid of speed. She rides in the Camry with you. She just knows what matters more." Raymond looked at her, grateful. "When did you get so wise?" She laughed. "About 5 minutes ago. Still figuring it out." 18 months after that first race in the parking garage, second gear had grown. 8 locations now, across 4 states. 500 students, 50 instructors. Veronica ran operations with the same intensity she'd once applied to profit margins, except now the metric was lives changed. Raymond led curriculum development, creating lessons that taught engineering and responsibility and pride. Penny, now 10, volunteered every weekend, the program's unofficial heart. They received a call from a documentary filmmaker wanting to feature the program. Veronica almost said yes. The publicity would help expansion. But Raymond shook his head. "We're not doing this for attention," he said gently. She paused, then smiled. "You're right." She declined the interview. That evening, they sat in the warehouse after everyone left, comfortable in the silence that follows productive work. "Can I ask you something?" Veronica said. Raymond nodded. "Do you ever think about racing again? Not teaching it, doing it." He considered. "Sometimes, but not the way I used to. Before, I raced to escape. Now, if I raced, it would be to remember. Angela." The joy before the tragedy, the feeling of being fully alive. He looked at her. "What about you? Miss the Porsche?" She laughed. "God, no. I miss winning sometimes. That rush. But I don't miss the emptiness after." She paused. "This is better. Slower. Messier. But better." A small town 200 miles away had requested a second gear location. Veronica and Raymond drove out to assess the site. An old factory. Perfect bones. Penny came along, homework spreading across the Camry's back seat as prairie landscape rolled past. They arrived at dusk, the factory silhouetted against orange sky. Inside, dust motes danced in failing light. High ceilings, good ventilation, room for 20 workstations. "It's perfect," Raymond said. Veronica walked the perimeter, seeing possibilities. Not profit, impact. Kids who needed this like she'd needed it at their age. "Let's do it," she decided. They left as darkness fell, stopping at a diner for dinner. Penny ordered pancakes, even though it was 7 p.m., and neither adult objected. Over food, they talked about nothing and everything. Penny's school project, a leak in Raymond's apartment ceiling, a student who'd gotten accepted to engineering school, normal conversation, normal life, normal happiness. Outside the diner, standing by the Camry, Veronica said, "Thank you." "For what?" Raymond asked, the same question as always. "For that morning, for racing me, for showing me there was more than winning." She smiled. "For being patient while I figured it out." He shrugged. "You did the hard part. I just drove next to you." They climbed back in the car and headed home. Three people who'd found each other by accident, bound together by something that looked like family. 2 years after the parking garage confrontation, Veronica sold her penthouse and moved into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in Raymond's building. Not next door, 3 floors up. Close enough to matter, far enough for independence. She donated $600 million of her $800 to establish a permanent endowment for second gear, ensuring it would survive beyond her. The remaining $200 she kept, invested conservatively, more money than she'd ever need. She worked 40 hours a week, not 80. Had dinner with Raymond and Penny twice weekly. Spent Saturdays at the warehouse, hands dirty and spirit light. One evening, Penny asked her over spaghetti, "Are you happy now, Miss Veronica?" Veronica considered seriously. "You know what? I actually am." Penny nodded, satisfied. "Good. You smile with your heart now." "When did I start doing that?" Veronica asked, curious. Penny thought about it. "The day Daddy taught you that losing is just another kind of winning." Raymond and Veronica exchanged glances, both recognizing truth in a child's words. After dinner, Raymond walked Veronica to the elevator. "She's not wrong," he said. "About what?" Veronica asked. "About you smiling differently. You look lighter." Veronica pressed the button, considering. "I feel lighter, like I put down something I didn't know I was carrying." The elevator arrived. She stepped in, then held the door. "Raymond, that challenge I made in the parking garage." He smiled. "Yeah?" She grinned. "I'm glad you never took it. The company would have been a terrible prize." The doors closed on their laughter. The National Training Center opened that fall in the small town they'd visited. 30 students in the first cohort, drawn from 12 states. Veronica and Raymond drove out for the opening ceremony, leaving Penny with the neighbor for the weekend. The factory had been transformed. Bright lights, clean floors, tools that gleamed. Students arrived nervous, wearing stories of foster care and poverty and doubt like armor. Veronica gave a speech, not the polished CEO performance she'd once delivered. Just honest words about failing and learning and discovering that building something was better than buying anything. "I spent a decade becoming a billionaire," she told them. "It taught me how to win. But it took losing everything to teach me why." She gestured to the workshop behind her. "This place isn't about making you successful. It's about teaching you that you're already valuable. The engines are just how we prove it." Afterward, one kid raised his hand. "My dad says you were the youngest self-made billionaire in tech. Why'd you give it up?" Veronica looked at Raymond, then back at the kid. "Because I finally figured out what I was racing toward, and it wasn't money." The kid nodded, not quite understanding, but sensing the truth underneath. That night, Raymond and Veronica sat in the factory's parking lot, exhausted and content. The Camry and Civic side by side, both showing 200,000 miles, but running strong. "Remember when you said your company was mine if I could outrun you?" Raymond asked. Veronica laughed. "God, I was such an asshole." "You were hurting," he corrected gently. "There's a difference." She looked at him. This man who'd shown her mercy when she'd shown him contempt, who'd taught her that slowing down wasn't losing, who'd become something she couldn't name, but needed. "I never thanked you properly," she said, "for what you did, for what you gave me." He shook his head. "I didn't give you anything. You built all this yourself." "You gave me time," she insisted. "In that race, when you lifted off the throttle, you gave me the space to understand. That's worth more than any company." Raymond was quiet, then said, "Angela used to say that the best gift you can give someone is believing they'll figure it out, even when they can't see it themselves." He smiled. "I just held the flashlight. You found your own way." They sat in comfortable silence, watching stars emerge overhead. Two broken people who'd learned to be whole, not through winning, through building. 5 years after the parking garage, Second Gear operated in 12 cities. 800 students. Graduation rate 93%. 22 kids had gone on to engineering schools. 47 owned their own repair shops. Hundreds more had learned that their value wasn't measured in wins and losses. Veronica ran the organization with quiet competence, driving a 10-year-old Civic she refused to replace. Raymond led instructor training, traveling between sites, teaching teachers. Penny, now 13, had started a blog documenting the program, written with the wisdom of someone who'd grown up watching broken things become whole. One Saturday, all three sat in the original warehouse, the place where it started. A student named Jordan had just successfully rebuilt a transmission after 3 failed attempts. The look on his face, pure disbelieving joy, was enough. "This is why," Veronica said quietly. Raymond nodded. Penny looked up from her laptop. "Why what?" Veronica gestured at the workshop, the students, the tools, the possibility. "Why we do it. That moment, when they realize they can." Penny smiled. "That's when they stop racing and start building." Veronica laughed. "When did you get so smart?" "I learned from you guys," Penny replied simply. "You taught me that speed isn't the point. Direction is." She returned to her typing, leaving the adults to sit with that truth. The final scene came on an ordinary Tuesday. Veronica's Civic needed an oil change, so she drove to the warehouse after work. Raymond was already there, the Camry on a lift, Penny doing homework in the office. Veronica pulled in, killed the engine, sat for a moment. Through the window, she could see Raymond working, methodical and focused. Could see Penny's silhouette at the desk. Could see the dozens of photos on the walls. Students, graduations, success stories. This was her empire now. Not glass towers and quarterly reports. But this. She climbed out, walked to where Raymond was finishing up. "Need help?" she asked. He looked down from the lift, grinned. "Always." She climbed up beside him, and they worked in comfortable silence, the practiced rhythm of people who'd spent years learning each other's patterns. After a while, Penny appeared. "I finished my essay," she announced. "What was the topic?" Veronica asked. "Wiping oil from a bolt." "Heroes," Penny replied. "I wrote about you two." Both adults stopped, looked at her. "Us?" Raymond said. "Why?" Penny shrugged. "Because you're the first people I met who figured out that winning and losing are just directions. What matters is whether you're moving toward people or away from them." She smiled. "Also, you make really good mac and cheese." She disappeared back to the office. Raymond and Veronica looked at each other, then burst out laughing. As darkness fell and they locked up the warehouse, Raymond asked, "Ever regret it? The race, everything that followed?" Veronica considered, keys in hand. "Not once. You?" He smiled. Not once. They walked to their cars, parked side by side as they'd been that first morning. The vehicles that had brought them together, one a symbol of excess, one a symbol of survival. Now both were just tools. Transportation, metal and rubber, and meaning assigned by the people who drove them. Same time tomorrow? Veronica asked. Same time tomorrow, Raymond confirmed. Penny climbed into the Camry's back seat, waving at Veronica through the window. Veronica waved back, then drove away. Not racing, not escaping, just driving home. As she merged into traffic, she thought about that morning 5 years ago. The challenge issued in contempt, the race that changed everything, the daughter's question that shattered her carefully constructed world. She'd been so certain that winning was everything, that speed mattered most, that the scoreboard was truth. But now, driving her modest car to her modest apartment to eat leftover pasta and watch television she'd actually remember, she understood what Penny had seen in that parking garage, that winning had made her lonely, and losing had set her free. Raymond drove Penny home through quiet streets, the Camry's engine humming its familiar song. In the rearview mirror, he watched his daughter sketching in her notebook, probably another drawing for the warehouse walls. Angela would have loved this, he thought. The program, the purpose, the peace. She'd always said he drove too fast through life, never stopping to see what he was racing past. He smiled at the memory. "Daddy?" Penny's voice pulled him back. "Yeah, sweetheart? Do you think Miss Veronica is happy now?" He considered. "I think she's learning to be. That's close enough." Penny nodded, satisfied. "Good, because she's not lonely anymore." She went back to drawing, and Raymond drove on. Grateful for second chances, and children who saw truth and challenges that turned into something better than winning. The Camry carried them home through the darkness, this beat-up sedan that a CEO had once called junk, this vehicle that had taught them all what really mattered. Not the finish line, the journey. Not the trophy, the people beside you. Not winning, being human. As they pulled into the parking garage, the same one where it all started, Raymond thought about the woman who'd changed their lives by seeing him as a scoreboard and learning to see him as a person. He parked in his usual spot, helped Penny gather her things, and walked toward the elevator. Tomorrow, they'd do it again. Teaching. Building, living at the speed of purpose instead of escape. It wasn't the life he'd planned, but it was exactly the life he needed. And somewhere 3 floors above them, a former CEO smiled in her sleep, dreaming not of boardrooms and victories, but of oil-stained hands and children learning they were already enough. The race was over. The building had just begun. And for the first time in their lives, both of them were exactly where they needed to be.